The rain hammered against the broken windows of the abandoned factory, each drop echoing through the empty halls like distant gunfire. Marcus Chun pulled his threadbare jacket tighter around his shoulders as he navigated through the debris-strewn corridors. His stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten in 2 days. The protein bar in his pocket was his last meal, save for when the hunger became truly unbearable. 3 months had passed since the convergence, when alien ships had appeared in Earth's skies without warning. Not to invade, but to flee. The galaxy was at war, they claimed, and Earth had become an unwitting refugee camp for dozens of alien species. The world governments had tried to manage the crisis, but resources were stretched thin. Food shortages had become common, especially in the outer districts where Marcus lived. He worked as a maintenance technician for the refugee processing centers, a job that barely paid enough for rent, let alone food. But it was honest work, and Marcus had always believed in earning his keep. His grandmother had raised him with simple values: help others when you can, work hard, and never take more than you need. The sound of whimpering stopped him in his tracks. It was soft, barely audible over the rain, but distinctly pained. Marcus followed the sound deeper into the factory, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Most people avoided this place at night. Too many refugees had taken shelter here, and not all of them were friendly. The whimpering grew louder as he climbed a rusted staircase to the second floor. His light swept across overturned machinery and scattered debris until it landed on something that made him gasp. Huddled in the corner, pressed against a massive piece of broken equipment, was a girl who couldn't have been older than 16. But she wasn't human. Pale blue scales covered her arms and legs, and 2 small horns protruded from her forehead. Her hair was white as snow, matted and dirty from weeks of living rough. Most striking were the wing-like appendages folded against her back, torn in several places and clearly unable to support flight. She was shivering violently, her eyes squeezed shut as she rocked back and forth. Even in the dim light, Marcus could see how thin she was. Her ribs were visible beneath her tattered clothing, and her face was gaunt with starvation. Marcus had heard about her species from other refugees. They called them the Draci, though humans had nicknamed them Dragon People. They were from a world that had been completely destroyed in the Galactic War, leaving only a few thousand survivors scattered across refugee ships. "Hey," Marcus called softly, not wanting to startle her. "Are you okay?" The girl's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that shifted color from blue to silver in the flashlight's beam. She pressed herself further into the corner, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper, heavily accented but understandable. "Please, no hurt. I go away. I go away now." She tried to stand, but collapsed immediately, too weak to support her own weight. Marcus instinctively stepped forward to help, but she flinched so violently that he stopped. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, raising his hands to show they were empty. "My name is Marcus. I work at the processing center downtown. What's your name?" The girl stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was telling the truth. Finally, she whispered Zura. "Zura," Marcus repeated, testing the name. "That's pretty. How long have you been here, Zura?" "Many, many days," she said, struggling with the words. "Lost from group. Cannot find others." Marcus's heart sank. He'd seen this before. The refugee processing system was overwhelmed, and people often got separated from their families or group assignments. Once you were lost in the system, it could take weeks or months to find your way back to help. "When did you last eat?" he asked gently. Zara looked down at her hands, shame coloring her pale features. "Not remember. Very hungry. So hungry it hurts inside." Marcus knew that feeling well. The gnawing ache that started in your stomach, but eventually consumed your whole body. The way it made you weak and dizzy, unable to think clearly. The desperation that crept in when you realized you might actually starve. He reached into his pocket and felt the protein bar there. His last meal. The sensible thing would be to save it, to make sure he had something to eat tomorrow. But looking at this young alien girl, clearly starving and alone, Marcus found that the choice was surprisingly easy. "Here," he said, pulling out the bar and offering it to her. "You need this more than I do." Zara stared at the food as if she couldn't believe it was real. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, then stopped just short of taking it. You give to me?" she asked. Confusion cleared her voice. "But you are human. I am Dracy. We are different." "Different doesn't mean you deserve to starve," Marcus said simply. "Go ahead, take it." Very carefully, as if the protein bar might disappear if she moved too quickly, Zara accepted the food. She unwrapped it with shaking fingers and took a small, tentative bite. The moment the food hit her tongue, tears began streaming down her face. "Oh," she gasped between bites. "Oh, thank you. Thank you so much." She devoured the bar in seconds, clearly fighting the urge to make it last. When it was gone, she looked up at Marcus with wonder. "Why you help me?" she asked. "Your people, they mostly avoid us. Some say we bring bad luck. Some say we are dangerous because we look like your mythology dragons." Marcus sat down on a piece of debris, careful to keep some distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. "My grandmother used to say that kindness doesn't have species requirements. If someone is hungry and you have food, you share. It's that simple." "Your grandmother sounds wise," Zara said softly. My grandmother, she say similar things. Before the burning of our world." "You lost your family?" Fresh tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. "All gone. In the fire ships that came to our world. I was on student transport, learning about other cultures. We were in space when it happened. Watched our planet burn from orbit." The pain in her voice was so raw that Marcus felt it like a physical blow. To lose everything at such a young age, to watch your entire world destroyed. He couldn't imagine that kind of trauma. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it completely. No one should have to go through that. They sat in silence for several minutes, the rain continuing to pound against the windows. Finally, Zara spoke again. "You're very kind, Marcus-chun, but now you have no food. You'll be hungry because of me." "I'll be fine," Marcus lied. "I can get more food tomorrow." Zara studied his face carefully. Despite being an alien, she seemed to have a good read on human expressions. "You lie to make me feel better. This was your last food, yes?" Marcus didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Then, I have taken from you what you need to survive," she said, fresh guilt replacing the gratitude in her voice. "This is wrong. I should not have accepted." "Hey, no," Marcus said firmly. "Listen to me, Zara. I chose to give it to you. Nobody forced me. I had food, and you were starving, so I shared. That's what decent people do." "Decent people," she repeated slowly. "This is human concept. Universal concept, I think. Or it should be." Zara was quiet for a long time, processing this. Then, she looked at him with curiosity. "Your people, they're all like this?" Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I wish they were. But no, humans can be pretty terrible sometimes. We fight wars. We hurt each other. We're selfish and cruel and stupid. But we can also be kind. We can choose to help instead of hurt. We can choose to share instead of hoard. Like you did. Like I did." Zara shifted position, wincing as her injured wings scraped against the concrete. Marcus noticed her discomfort. "You're hurt," he observed. "Wings are damaged from living rough. Cannot fly anyway, but now they cause pain." Marcus wished he had medical supplies, but his first aid kit was back at his apartment. The best he could offer was shelter from the rain. "This place isn't safe," he said. "There are some rough characters who use these abandoned buildings. You shouldn't stay here alone. Where else can I go? The refugee centers, they say they are full. No space for lost Dracy girl." Marcus knew she was right. The processing centers were overcrowded, and there was a waiting list just to get on the waiting list. Unless you had documentation proving your refugee status, you were often turned away. You could stay at my place tonight," he offered hesitantly. "It's not much, just a small apartment, but it's warm and dry. You could get cleaned up, rest properly." Zara's eyes widened with surprise. "You would let alien stranger into your home? You're not a stranger anymore. You're Zara, the girl who lost everything but still has hope. And besides," he added with a small smile, "my grandmother always said our home was big enough for anyone who needed shelter." "Your grandmother," She was a very wise woman. She'd have liked you, I think. For the first time since he'd found her, Zara smiled. It was a small, tentative thing, but it transformed her entire face. Despite her alien features, her smile was remarkably human in its warmth. I would like to meet her, Zara said. Marcus's expression grew sad. She passed away last year, but I try to live by the things she taught me. Then, part of her wisdom lives in you. And now, through your kindness, part of it touches me too. The simple profundity of her words struck Marcus deeply. Here was a girl who had lost everything, who was starving and alone, and she was finding beauty in shared wisdom and human kindness. Come on, he said, standing and offering his hand. Let's get you somewhere safe. Zara looked at his extended hand for a moment, then slowly reached out and took it. Her skin was cool to the touch, and her fingers ended in small, claw-like points, but her grip was gentle and grateful. Marcus helped her to her feet, supporting her when she swayed from weakness. Together, they made their way through the abandoned factory and out into the rain-soaked night. As they walked through the empty streets toward his apartment, Marcus reflected on the evening's events. He had given away his last meal to a stranger of a different species, had offered his home to someone he'd just met. By any practical measure, these were foolish decisions that would likely cause him problems. But as he felt Zara's grateful presence beside him, as he remembered the way her face had lit up with that small smile, Marcus knew he had made the right choice. His grandmother had been right about kindness having no species requirements. What he didn't know, as they walked through the rain together, was that this simple act of sharing would set in motion a chain of events that would change not just their lives, but the course of the entire Galactic War. The universe had a way of rewarding genuine kindness, often in ways that no one could predict. For now, though, Marcus was content to help a hungry girl find shelter from the storm. Sometimes the most important moments in history begin with the smallest acts of compassion. Marcus's apartment was exactly as he had described it. Small, simple, but clean and warm. Zara stood in the doorway, dripping rainwater onto the worn carpet, her silver eyes taking in every detail of the space. For someone who had been sleeping rough for weeks, it might as well have been a palace. It's not much, Marcus said apologetically, grabbing a towel from the tiny bathroom. But the heat works, and the roof doesn't leak. Zara accepted the towel gratefully, wrapping it around her shoulders. It is wonderful, she said softly. I had forgotten what it feels like to be somewhere safe. Marcus showed her the bathroom, explaining how the shower worked, and leaving her some clean clothes that might fit her small frame. While she cleaned up, he rummaged through his kitchen cabinets, looking for something to feed both of them. His supplies were running low, but he found a can of soup and some crackers. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. When Zara emerged from the bathroom 20 minutes later, Marcus barely recognized her. Clean and dry, her scales shimmered with an iridescent quality he hadn't noticed before. Her white hair, now clean and brushed, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. The borrowed clothes were too big for her, but she looked infinitely better than the broken, starving creature he had found in the factory. You look better, Marcus said, stirring the soup on his small stove. How do you feel? Like I am dreaming, Zara replied, settling carefully into one of his two chairs. Her damaged wings shifted uncomfortably behind her, and Marcus noticed her wince. Those wings really hurt, don't they? Zara nodded. They were torn when I fell while running from some humans who threw rocks at me. I cannot fly anyway since I am young, but now they may never heal properly. Marcus felt a surge of anger at the cruelty of his own species. I'm sorry that happened to you. Not all humans are like that. I'm beginning to understand this, Zara said, watching him dish up the soup. You are very different from others I have met. They ate in comfortable silence, both savoring the simple meal. Marcus noticed that despite her obvious hunger, Zara ate slowly and carefully, making the food last. It was a habit born of scarcity, one he recognized from his own recent struggles. Marcus, Zara said eventually, may I ask you something? Of course. Why do you live alone? Do humans not usually live in family groups? Marcus set down his spoon, considering how to answer. Some do. I used to live with my grandmother, but she died last year. I don't have other family, and I haven't found anyone to build a new family with yet. You must be lonely. The simple observation hit closer to home than Marcus expected. Sometimes, he admitted, but I keep busy with work, and I try to help people when I can. That helps. Zara nodded thoughtfully. On my world, we lived in what you might call clans. Extended families that shared everything. I miss that connection very much. Tell me about your world, Marcus said, genuinely curious. What was it like before the war? Zara's eyes grew distant, and for a moment Marcus thought she might not answer. Then she began to speak, her voice soft with memory. It was beautiful. We had floating cities that moved with the wind currents and great gardens that grew in the clouds. Our people were artists and scholars mostly. We studied the sky, the weather patterns, the movement of celestial bodies. We believed that understanding the heavens would help us understand ourselves. It sounds incredible, Marcus said. How did you end up on the student transport? I was part of cultural exchange program. 15 young Draci were chosen to visit other worlds, to learn about different species, and share knowledge in return. We were supposed to be gone for 1 year. Her voice broke slightly. We had been away for 8 months when the burning ships came. Marcus reached across the small table and gently touched her hand. I'm sorry, Zara. That's an unimaginable loss. She looked down at their joined hands, studying the contrast between her blue-scaled skin and his warm brown human flesh. The others from my transport, they were assigned to different refugee camps when we arrived on Earth. I was supposed to go to a facility in what you call Canada, but there was a mistake with paperwork. I got put on wrong transport, ended up here instead. I've been trying to find correct camp ever since, but the system is so complicated. Marcus frowned. He knew how bureaucratic the refugee system had become, but he might be able to help navigate it. I work in processing. I might be able to help you find your friends. Hope bloomed in Zara's eyes. You would do this? Even though it would mean I leave and you never see me again? The question caught Marcus off guard. Would he be sad to see her go? The thought surprised him. He had known this girl for only a few hours, but already he felt protective of her. Still, reuniting her with her people was clearly the right thing to do. Of course I would help, he said. That's what friends do. Friends. Zara repeated the word carefully. Yes, I think we are becoming friends. They finished their meal, and Marcus made up a bed for Zara on his small couch. She insisted on helping with the dishes, moving carefully around his tiny kitchen. Marcus found himself watching her with fascination. Despite their different species, there was something very human about the way she moved, the expressions that crossed her face. Marcus, she said as they finished cleaning up, may I ask another question? Ask as many as you want. The food you gave me tonight, and this shelter, this kindness, is this normal behavior for humans? Marcus considered this carefully. I wish I could say yes. But honestly, no, it's not normal. Most people, human or otherwise, tend to look after themselves first, especially when resources are scarce like they are now. Then, why do you do it? It was a question Marcus had never really examined deeply. I guess because my grandmother taught me that we're all connected somehow, that helping others is really helping yourself, just in ways you might not see immediately. Zara tilted her head, studying him. This is why you're different. You see connections where others see only differences. Maybe, or maybe I'm just naive. No, Zara said firmly. Not naive, wise, like your grandmother. That night, Marcus lay in his bed listening to Zara's soft breathing from the living room. He thought about the events of the day, about the choice he had made to share his last meal with a stranger. His stomach was still empty, and he had no idea how he would afford food tomorrow, but he felt no regret. Something about Zara intrigued him beyond simple compassion for her plight. There was an intelligence in her eyes, a depth of character that seemed remarkable for someone so young who had endured such trauma. And, despite their obvious physical differences, he found her alien features strangely beautiful. These thoughts troubled him. Was he developing feelings for an alien? Was that even possible? Normal? He had heard of humans forming relationships with some of the more human-like refugee species, but it was still uncommon and often met with social disapproval. Marcus pushed these confusing thoughts aside and tried to sleep. Tomorrow he would help Zara navigate the refugee system and find her people. That was what mattered now. But across the apartment, Zara was having similar thoughts. She had never met a human like Marcus before. The others she had encountered had either ignored her, been afraid of her, or actively hostile. Marcus was different. He looked at her and saw a person, not a monster or curiosity. On her world, the concept of friendship transcending species was not foreign. The Dracy had formed bonds with several other species before the war, but she had not expected to find such understanding among humans, who were still relatively new to interspecies contact. More confusing were the feelings stirring in her chest when she looked at Marcus. Gratitude, certainly, but something deeper too. An attraction that surprised her with its intensity. Was this normal? Could such feelings exist between their species? The next morning brought new challenges. Marcus woke to find his building's superintendent pounding on his door, demanding to know why there was an unregistered alien in his apartment. "Look, Chun," the man said, pushing his way inside despite Marcus's protests. "I got neighbors complaining about strange sounds last night. Some kind of non-human vocalizations. You know the building policy about unauthorized aliens." Marcus glanced toward the bathroom, where he could hear Zara getting ready for the day. "She's just a refugee who needed help. She'll be gone soon. She better be. You got 24 hours to get her registered with building management or she's out. And if she causes any problems, you're both out." After the superintendent left, Marcus explained the situation to Zara. She took the news with the resigned acceptance of someone who had faced rejection many times before. "I understand," she said. "I should not have stayed. I did not want to cause problems for you." "You're not causing problems. He's the problem." Marcus's anger at the unfairness of it all burned hot in his chest. "But don't worry. We'll get you registered today, or we'll find you proper placement in the system." They left the apartment together, heading for the refugee processing center where Marcus worked. The morning was crisp and clear, a welcome change from the previous night's rain. As they walked, Marcus noticed how people stared at Zara, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed hostility. "Does this bother you?" he asked quietly. The staring. Zara shrugged. "I'm used to it. We look very different from humans. Most people have never seen a Dracy before." "You're beautiful," Marcus said before he could stop himself. "Your people, I mean. You have an elegant quality that's very appealing." Zara's scales flushed a deeper blue, what Marcus was beginning to recognize as her species' equivalent of blushing. "You truly think so?" "I do." They reached the processing center, a massive concrete building that had been hastily converted from an old shopping mall. The place was chaos, with hundreds of aliens from dozens of species waiting in various lines, filling out forms, or camped out in the waiting areas. Marcus used his employee access to get them to the front of one of the inquiry lines. The clerk, a harried-looking woman named Sandra, looked up with relief when she saw Marcus. "Oh good, Marcus. We need you on level 3. 2 of the translation computers are down, and we have a group of Vorthan refugees who don't speak any standard languages." "Actually, Sandra, I need a favor first. This is Zara. She's a Dracy who got separated from her group assignment. We need to track down where she's supposed to be." Sandra looked at Zara with professional interest. "Dracy? Haven't seen one of you in weeks. What's your registration number?" Zara provided the number she had memorized, and Sandra typed it into her computer. After several minutes of searching, she frowned. "This is strange. According to the system, you were processed and assigned to a camp in northern Canada 3 weeks ago. But there's a note here saying you never arrived at the destination." "That's right," Zara confirmed. "I was put on wrong transport, but the transport logs show you as delivered." Sandra's frown deepened. "This doesn't make sense. Either the transport company lied about delivery, or someone falsified the records." Marcus felt a chill of unease. "What does that mean?" "It means someone in the system is playing games with refugee assignments. We've had reports of this before, but never with documentation this clear. Sandra looked troubled. I need to report this to my supervisor. In the meantime, Zara, you're in limbo. You exist in the system, but you don't, if you know what I mean. How long will it take to sort out? Marcus asked. Could be days, could be weeks. The bureaucracy moves slowly on the best of days, and this kind of systemic problem, well, it's complicated. As they left the processing center, both Marcus and Zara were quiet, processing this new information. Finally, Zara spoke. I am cursed, she said simply. Everything I touch becomes complicated. You're not cursed, Marcus replied firmly. The system is broken. That's all. We'll figure it out. You keep saying we, Zara observed. But this is my problem, not yours. Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. Listen to me, Zara. Why share my food with you last night? When I offered you shelter, I didn't do it because I thought it would be easy or simple. I did it because it was right. And just because things get complicated doesn't mean I'm going to abandon you. Zara stared at him for a long moment, her silver eyes searching his face. Why? Why would you tie your fate to mine when you barely know me? Marcus thought about it seriously before answering. Because sometimes you meet someone and you just know they're important. I can't explain it better than that. Important how? I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out. As they stood there on the busy street, surrounded by the chaos of a world struggling to manage an unprecedented refugee crisis, something shifted between them. An understanding, perhaps, or a recognition of something deeper than simple friendship. Neither of them realized that their conversation was being watched by unfriendly eyes, or that Zara's bureaucratic problems were not the result of simple administrative error. Forces were at work that would soon test both their growing bond and Marcus's commitment to his principles. But for now, they had each other and the promise of figuring things out together. It would have to be enough. The revelation that Zara's paperwork problems were not accidental came sooner than either of them expected. 3 days after their visit to the processing center, Marcus received an unexpected visitor at work. Agent Sarah Cross from Earth Security Services was a sharp-featured woman in her 40s, wearing a crisp black suit that screamed government authority. She found Marcus in the maintenance bay, where he was repairing a translation terminal. Marcus Chun? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. That's me. How can I help you? Agent Cross flashed her credentials. I need to ask you some questions about a Dracy refugee you've been harboring. Marcus felt his blood pressure spike. Harboring? She's a registered refugee seeking proper placement. Actually, she's not. Cross pulled out a tablet and showed him the screen. Zara of the Cloudspire clan is listed as a security risk by the Galactic Council. She's wanted for questioning regarding terrorist activities against the hegemony forces. That's impossible, Marcus said immediately. She's just a student who got separated from her group. She was on a cultural exchange when her world was destroyed. Was she? Cross asked, her voice skeptical. According to our intelligence, several Dracy terrorists have been using student exchange programs as cover for infiltration missions. The destruction of their homeworld has made the survivors desperate, and some have turned to radical tactics. Marcus set down his tools and faced the agent directly. You're talking about a girl who was starving in an abandoned building. A girl who cried because someone shared a protein bar with her. Does that sound like a terrorist to you? Terrorists come in all forms, Mr. Chun. And sometimes the most effective ones are those who appear innocent. Cross leaned closer. Where is she now? Marcus hesitated. Zara was back at his apartment, still trying to recover from weeks of malnutrition and exposure. The idea that she could be dangerous seemed ridiculous, but doubt began to creep into his mind. How would he really know her? I want to see the evidence, he said finally. Cross smiled coldly. That's classified. But I can tell you that her DNA signature was found at the site of an attack on a hegemony supply depot. 3 soldiers died in that attack. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Could Zara really be involved in terrorism? But then he remembered her tears, her gratitude, the genuine pain in her voice when she spoke about her lost world. When did this attack happen? He asked. 2 months ago on Kepler Station. 2 months ago, Zara was already on Earth. Marcus pointed out. I can verify that through the transport logs. Cross's expression flickered with annoyance. DNA evidence can be planted, Mr. Chun. These terrorists are sophisticated. So sophisticated that they would plant evidence to frame a random student, but not sophisticated enough to prevent her from getting lost in the refugee system. You're being naive. These aliens don't think like humans do. Their motivations and methods are alien to us. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. No, what's alien is your willingness to condemn someone without proof. Zara is innocent. That's not for you to decide. I need you to bring her in for questioning. And if I refuse? Cross's smile turned predatory. Then, you'll be charged as an accessory to terrorism. Your choice, Mr. Chun. Marcus stared at the agent for a long moment, his mind racing. Everything in him rebelled against the idea of betraying Zara, but the threat of terrorism charges was serious. His career, his freedom, possibly his life, could be forfeit. I need time to think about this, he said finally. You have until tomorrow morning. Bring her to the downtown federal building by 9 a.m., or we'll come and get her ourselves. After Cross left, Marcus sat alone in the maintenance bay, his hands shaking with anger and confusion. Could he have been so wrong about Zara? Was his grandmother's faith in universal kindness just naive optimism? He left work early and walked home slowly, dreading the conversation he was about to have. When he entered his apartment, he found Zara sitting by the window, reading one of his books. She looked up with a smile that faltered when she saw his expression. What is wrong, Marcus? You look troubled. Marcus sat down across from her, struggling to find the right words. Zara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Her silver eyes grew wary. Of course. What do you wish to know? Have you ever been involved in any kind of violent activities? Any attacks against hegemony forces? Zara's face went pale, her scales losing their iridescent shimmer. Why do you ask this? Please, just answer the question. For a long moment, Zara was silent. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. The simple admission hit Marcus harder than a physical blow. He felt something inside him break, a faith in his own judgment that he wasn't sure he could repair. Tell me everything, he said quietly. Zara stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city skyline. You remember I told you about the student exchange program? It was real, but it was not the whole truth. What was the whole truth? We were students, but we were also scouts. Our people knew the war was coming to our world. They sent groups of young people to other worlds, officially for cultural exchange, but really to establish contacts, to prepare escape routes for our people. Marcus felt sick. So you were spies. Not spies exactly. More like preparation committee. We were supposed to learn about other worlds, make friends, establish relationships that could help our people if we needed to flee. And the attack on the supply depot? Zara turned from the window, tears streaming down her face. After our world burned, some of the survivors wanted revenge. They asked those of us on the exchange programs to help. Most of us refused. We just wanted to grieve, to find some way to rebuild our lives. But some didn't refuse. My clutch brother, Keth. He was on a different exchange program, on a station near hegemony space. When the call came for volunteers to strike back, he answered. He used my genetic material to frame me for his attack. How could he do that? Dracy genetics work differently than humans. Family members can synthesize each other's DNA signatures if they have access to biological samples. He kept a scale I had given him as a childhood gift. After his attack, he left it at the scene so that if he was caught, investigators would also come looking for me. Marcus stared at her, trying to process this information. Why would he frame his own sister? Because he knew that if they captured me, they would try to use me to get to him. And he was right. Zara's voice was heavy with pain. He sacrificed me to protect himself and his cause. Do you know where he is now? No, and I would not tell you if I did. He is still my clutch brother, even though he has betrayed me. Marcus leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. The situation was far more complicated than he had imagined. Zara wasn't a terrorist, but she was connected to one. Her loyalty to family, even family that had wronged her, was admirable but also dangerous. "There's more," he said quietly, and told her about Agent Cross's visit. When he finished, Zara nodded sadly. "I wondered when this would happen. I have been running from Earth security for weeks. That is how I ended up lost in the system. You've been a fugitive this whole time, not by choice. When the authorities came to question me about Ket's attack, I panicked and ran. I knew that if they took me, they would never believe my innocence. The evidence against me is too strong." Marcus felt betrayed and confused. "So you lied to me? About being lost? About needing help finding your group?" "No," Zara said quickly. "I mean, yes, I lied about some things, but not about needing help. I'm lost, Marcus. Lost from my people, lost from any legal protection, lost from any hope of a normal life. And I do need help. Desperately." She knelt beside his chair, her eyes pleading. "I know I should have told you everything from the beginning, but would you have helped me if you had known I was wanted by the authorities?" Marcus considered this honestly. "I don't know. Maybe not. Then, you understand why I stayed silent. You were the first person in months to show me kindness. I could not bear to lose that." They sat in silence for several minutes, both grappling with the implications of this revelation. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Agent Cross wants me to bring you in tomorrow morning. If I don't, they'll charge me as an accessory." Zara's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Then, you must do what you need to do." "I understand." "Do you?" Marcus asked. "Do you really understand what you're asking of me?" "I'm asking nothing. You have already done more for me than anyone else in the universe. You gave me food when you had none. You shared your home with a stranger. You treated me like a person when everyone else saw only an alien. I will never forget that kindness, no matter what happens next." Marcus stood and began pacing the small apartment. "This is impossible. If I turn you in, they'll probably execute you as a terrorist. If I don't, I'll be arrested, and you'll still be caught eventually." "There's a third option," Zara said quietly. "What?" "You can help me escape Earth." Marcus stopped pacing and stared at her. "That's insane. Even if we could get you off planet, where would you go? The hegemony controls most of the galaxy. There are resistance groups, planets that have not fallen to the hegemony yet. My people, the survivors, they are gathering somewhere beyond the rim. If I could reach them, you're talking about me becoming an actual criminal, helping a fugitive escape, probably treason against Earth government." "Yes," Zara said simply. "I am asking you to throw away your life for someone you have known for 3 days." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "When you put it like that, it sounds completely crazy." "It is crazy, but sometimes crazy is the only thing that makes sense." Marcus thought about his grandmother, about her belief in kindness and connection across all boundaries. Would she have helped Zara escape? Or would she have counseled him to follow the law and trust the system? "I need to think," he said finally. "Of course. But, Marcus, whatever you decide, I want you to know that meeting you has restored some of my faith in the universe. You showed me that goodness can exist even in the darkest times." That night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. In a few hours, he would have to make a choice that would define the rest of his life. Turn an innocent girl to face execution, or throw away everything he had built to help her escape. But as he listened to Zara's soft breathing from the couch, as he remembered her tears of gratitude over a simple protein bar, Marcus realized that the choice had already been made. It had been made the moment he decided to share his last meal with a starving stranger. His grandmother had been right about kindness having no species requirements. But she had never mentioned that sometimes kindness required courage, sacrifice, and a willingness to stand against the entire system. Marcus got up quietly and began making plans. If they were going to do this, they would need help, resources, and, most importantly, they would need to disappear before Agent Cross came looking for them in the morning. The universe was at war, but Marcus was about to discover that sometimes the most important battles are fought not with weapons, but with simple acts of human decency. And sometimes those battles require ordinary people to do extraordinary things. As he began gathering supplies for their escape, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to embark on something much larger than just helping one refugee girl. Something that would ripple outward in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But that was a worry for another time. Right now, he had a friend to save. Marcus woke Zara before dawn, his mind clear with purpose despite having barely slept. He had spent the night planning their escape, using his knowledge of the refugee processing system to identify their best chance of getting off Earth. "We need to leave now," he whispered urgently. "I know someone who might help us." Zara sat up quickly, instantly alert. "You have decided to help me escape?" "I've decided that letting innocent people die is wrong, no matter what the law says." They gathered what few belongings they could carry and slipped out of the apartment building through the maintenance exit. The pre-dawn streets were mostly empty, with only the occasional security patrol or early worker to avoid. Marcus led them through back alleys and side streets toward the industrial district, where the cargo spaceport handled most of Earth's interplanetary freight. As they walked, he explained his plan. "There's a guy named Jimmy Castillo who runs a small shipping operation. He's not exactly legal, but he's not exactly criminal either. He helped me get some black market medicine for my grandmother before she died. You think he will help us? For the right price, Jimmy will ship anything anywhere. The question is whether we can afford his price." They reached Castillo's warehouse just as the first workers were arriving for the morning shift. Jimmy himself was a grizzled man in his 60s, with a weathered look of someone who had spent decades in space. He recognized Marcus immediately. "Marcus Chun, haven't seen you since your grandmother's funeral. What brings you to my humble establishment?" "I need passage off Earth for 2 people. Discreet passage." Jimmy's demeanor immediately became more cautious. "That's expensive, amigo. And dangerous. Earth security has been cracking down on unauthorized departures." "How expensive?" 20,000 credits. Each. Marcus felt his heart sink. He had maybe 300 credits to his name. "I don't have that kind of money." Jimmy shrugged. "Then I can't help you. Sorry, but business is business." Marcus was about to give up when Zara stepped forward. "What if we could offer you something more valuable than money?" Both men looked at her with surprise. Jimmy's eyes narrowed as he took in her alien features. "You're Dracy. I heard your people were all dead." "Most of us are," Zara replied calmly. "But some survive, and some of us know things that could be very valuable to the right person." "What kind of things?" Zara glanced at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. "My people were scholars of atmospheric sciences. We understood weather control, climate manipulation, gravitational field generation, technologies that could revolutionize terraforming." Jimmy's interest was clearly piqued. "And you know these technologies?" "I was a student in the Advanced Atmospheric Engineering program. I know enough to be useful." "Prove it." Zara looked around the warehouse and pointed to a stack of cargo containers. Those containers contained sensitive electronics, but they're stored in an area with high humidity. Your climate control system is inadequate for this space. I can improve it with simple modifications that will reduce your spoilage losses by 60%. Jimmy stared at her for a moment, then walked over to check the containers. When he returned, his expression had changed. "Those containers do have humidity problems. Been losing money on damaged goods for months." "How did you know?" "I can sense air pressure, moisture content, temperature variations. It is natural ability of my people, enhanced by training. And you could really fix my climate control?" "In less than an hour, using only materials you already have in this warehouse." Jimmy was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, here's the deal. You fix my warehouse systems, and I'll get you both off Earth. But I choose the destination." "Where?" Marcus asked. "Kepler Station. It's a trading hub on the edge of hegemony space. Lots of refugees, lots of opportunities, lots of places to disappear." Marcus and Zara exchanged glances. Kepler Station was the same place where Zara's brother had carried out his attack. It was probably the last place in the galaxy she should go. "Is there anywhere else?" Marcus asked. "For free passage?" "No. Kepler Station is where I'm headed anyway. Take it or leave it." Zara made the decision for both of them. "We take it." For the next hour, Marcus watched in amazement as Zara modified Jimmy's climate control system. Her understanding of atmospheric dynamics was extraordinary, and her hands moved with practiced precision as she rerouted ducts, adjusted pressure valves, and recalibrated sensors. Your people really were engineers, Jimmy commented, watching her work. We had to be, Zara replied. Living in floating cities requires perfect understanding of air currents, pressure dynamics, temperature control. A small mistake could send an entire city crashing to the ground. When she finished, the air in the warehouse felt noticeably different. Cleaner, drier, more comfortable. Incredible, Jimmy said, checking his instruments. Humidity down 40%, temperature stable, air circulation improved. This is going to save me thousands. Then, we have a deal? Marcus asked. We have a deal. But we leave now. My ship launches in 2 hours, and if we miss that window, you'll have to wait another week. They boarded Jimmy's ship, a battered cargo hauler called the Maverick Dawn, just as Earth's security vehicles began arriving at the industrial district. Through the small porthole in their passenger cabin, Marcus could see Agent Cross directing a search of the nearby warehouses. Close call, Jimmy observed as he started the launch sequence. Whatever you two did, Earth security really wants you back. The launch was rougher than Marcus expected. He had never been in space before, and the sensation of leaving Earth's gravity well left him nauseous and disoriented. Zara, despite her small size, seemed unaffected by the acceleration forces. Space travel is natural for my people, she explained, helping Marcus to a seat. We evolved in low-gravity environments. Once they were clear of Earth's atmosphere and heading for the jump point, Jimmy invited them to the ship's small common area. Over a meal of rehydrated food and recycled coffee, he shared what he knew about current conditions in the galaxy. The war's getting worse, he told them. Hegemony forces are pushing deeper into the outer systems every day. Whole planets are being evacuated or destroyed. The Resistance is putting up a fight, but they're outgunned and outnumbered. What about the refugees? Zara asked. Are they finding safe places? Some. There are a few systems still outside hegemony control, but they're struggling to handle the influx. Resources are stretched thin everywhere. Marcus thought about what this meant for their future. Even if they reached Kepler Station safely, what then? They would be fugitives in a galaxy at war, with limited resources and no legal status. Jimmy, he said, what do you know about Dracy survivors? Are there really resistance groups gathering beyond the rim? Jimmy glanced at Zara before answering. Rumors, mostly. Some say there's a coalition forming in the Tartarus sector, bringing together survivors from destroyed worlds. Dracy, Vorthan, Etherian, others. But it's dangerous territory out there. Pirates, hostile aliens, uncharted space. But it exists. Maybe. Hard to say what's real and what's wishful thinking when you're talking to desperate refugees. That night, as the Maverick Dawn traveled through hyperspace toward Kepler Station, Marcus and Zara sat together in the ship's small observation lounge. Through the viewport, the swirling patterns of hyperspace created an almost hypnotic display. Marcus, Zara said quietly, I need to tell you something. What is it? When we reach Kepler Station, you should stay there. Find some way to get back to Earth, or at least to a safe human world. Do not follow me beyond the rim. Marcus looked at her with surprise. Why would I abandon you now? Because what lies ahead is not your fight. I am Dracy, one of the hunted species. But you are human. You could build a good life in human space if you were careful. And leave you to face the galaxy alone? I survived alone for weeks before I met you. I can do it again. Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching the patterns in hyperspace shift and swirl. Zara, can I ask you something? Of course. When you were starving in that abandoned factory, when you thought you might die alone and forgotten, what kept you going? Zara considered this carefully. Hope, I suppose. Hope that somewhere in the universe there were still people who cared about more than just survival. People who would choose kindness over self-interest. And when I shared my food with you, did that restore your hope? Yes, it did. Marcus nodded. Then, you understand why I can't abandon you now. You restored something in me too, Zara. You showed me that my grandmother's values still matter, even in a galaxy at war. Especially in a galaxy at war. But the danger is exactly why you need someone watching your back. And besides, Marcus added with a small smile, someone needs to keep you fed. Zara laughed. The first genuine laugh he had heard from her. You are impossible, Marcus-chun. So are you, Zara of the Cloudspire clan. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching hyperspace flow around them. Both knew that whatever awaited them at Kepler Station would test their growing bond, possibly beyond its breaking point. But, for now, they had each other and the promise of facing the unknown together. Unknown to them, their conversation was being monitored by Jimmy's ship systems, and that data was already being transmitted to interested parties across the galaxy. Their escape from Earth had not gone unnoticed, and forces were already moving to intercept them at Kepler Station. But Marcus and Zara had something their enemies didn't expect. The kind of loyalty forged in shared adversity, and the determination that comes from having nothing left to lose except each other. The next phase of their journey was about to begin, and with it, their transformation from refugees to something much more dangerous to the established order. Sometimes the most powerful revolutions begin with simple acts of kindness, and sometimes those revolutions are carried forward by the most unlikely heroes. Kepler Station was nothing like Marcus had expected. Instead of the gleaming technological marvel he had imagined, it was a sprawling, chaotic collection of modules, docking rings, and habitat cylinders that looked like it had been built by committee over several decades. Ships of every size and design imaginable were docked at its various ports, and the corridors buzzed with activity from hundreds of different species. Welcome to the crossroads of the galaxy, Jimmy said as they disembarked from the Maverick Dawn. Keep your heads down, don't trust anyone, and remember that everything here has a price. Marcus and Zara made their way through the station's main concourse, trying to blend in with the crowds. It was easier than Marcus had expected. With so many different alien species present, one more human Dracy pair attracted little attention. They found cheap accommodation in a hostel that catered to refugees and transients. The room was barely large enough for 2 narrow beds, but it was clean and relatively secure. More importantly, it was paid for with credits Jimmy had advanced them in exchange for Zara's promised technical consultations. What now? Marcus asked as they settled into their temporary home. Now we try to find information about the gathering beyond the rim, Zara replied. But carefully, there are hegemony agents on this station, and they may be looking for us. Their first lead came from an unexpected source. While eating in the station's food court, they overheard a conversation between 2 Vorthan refugees discussing supply runs to something called Haven. Marcus approached their table cautiously. Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing. Are you talking about the refugee gathering in the Tartarus sector? The larger Vorthan, whose crystalline skin marked him as a warrior caste, studied Marcus suspiciously. Who wants to know? My friend here is Dracy, Marcus said, gesturing to Zara. We're looking for other survivors. The Vorthan's attitude immediately changed. Dracy? I thought you were all dead. Not all, Zara said softly, but close to it. The second Vorthan, smaller and with the smoother skin of the scholar caste, leaned forward with interest. I am HFY, and this is my bond warrior Thekmor. We escaped when our homeworld was glassed 6 months ago. I am Zara, and this is Marcus. We escaped from Earth when the authorities tried to arrest me for crimes I did not commit. Thekmor growled low in his throat. The hegemony's definition of crime includes the act of surviving their attacks. We know this pain. HFY placed a restraining hand on his companion's arm. Peace, warrior. These are friends. He turned back to Marcus and Zara. Yes, there's a gathering in the Tartarus sector. They call it Haven, though whether it lives up to that name remains to be seen. How do we get there? Marcus asked. That is the difficult part, HFY admitted. The route changes frequently to avoid hegemony patrols. And passage is expensive, especially for those who cannot contribute to the common defense. What kind of contribution do they need? Zara asked. Technical expertise, mostly. Haven is trying to build something that can stand against the hegemony. They need engineers, scientists, people who understand advanced technology. Zara and Marcus exchanged glances. This could be exactly what they were looking for. We might be able to help with that, Zara said carefully. I have some knowledge of atmospheric engineering and gravitational field generation. Both Vorthan's eyes widened with interest. Gravitational fields? Thekmore asked. That could be very valuable indeed. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the food court entrance. A group of security officers in hegemony uniforms had entered and were scanning the crowd with handheld devices. "Time to go," Kefere said quietly. "Follow us." They abandoned their meals and followed the Vorthans through a series of maintenance corridors that led to the station's lower levels. Here, away from the main commercial areas, the atmosphere was different. Darker, more desperate, but also more honest. "This is where the real business happens," Thekmore explained as they walked. Away from hegemony surveillance. They arrived at a bar called the Broken Chain, whose clientele was exclusively non-human. The bartender, a massive creature that might have been part insect and part machine, nodded respectfully to the Vorthans. "Gekda, Tekmal, your usual table is available." They settled into a booth in the back corner, where the lighting was dim and the ambient noise provided natural cover for conversation. "The ship we came on is leaving for Haven tomorrow," Kefare told them. "But the captain is particular about his passengers. You would need to prove your value." "Ow!" Marcus asked. "Demonstration of technical ability, usually. Can your friend actually do what she claims with gravitational fields?" Zara nodded confidently. "Given the right materials, yes. Then, we arrange a test. If you pass, Captain Torres will take you to Haven. If not," he shrugged, "you find another way." The test took place in an abandoned section of the station that had been damaged in a pirate attack years earlier. Captain Torres, a weathered human who had clearly seen too much of the galaxy's dark side, watched skeptically as Zara examined the broken artificial gravity generators. "Whole section's been dead for 3 years," he told her. Station management gave up trying to fix it. Zara studied the machinery for several minutes, running her hands over the damaged components and closing her eyes as if sensing something the others couldn't detect. "The problem is not with the generators themselves," she said finally. "It is with the field harmonics. The gravitational waves are interfering with each other instead of reinforcing. The repairs that were attempted before actually made the problem worse." "Can you fix it?" Torres asked. "Yes, but not the way you might expect. Instead of fighting the interference, I can use it, turn the chaotic field patterns into a more efficient system than the original design." Marcus watched in fascination as Zara went to work. Her understanding of gravitational dynamics was intuitive in a way that seemed almost magical. She rerouted power conduits, adjusted field generators, and modified control circuits with a precision that spoke of deep theoretical knowledge combined with practical experience. When she activated the repaired system, the change was immediate and dramatic. Not only did the artificial gravity return to the dead section, but the field strength was more uniform and stable than in the rest of the station. "Incredible," Torres breathed. "This is better than the original system. My people understood that technology works best when it cooperates with natural forces instead of fighting them," Zara explained. "Your engineers try to impose order. We learn to find the order that already exists and enhance it." Torres studied her for a long moment. "Lady, if you can do this with a broken gravity generator, I hate to think what you could do with proper equipment and unlimited resources." "That," said a new voice from the entrance, "is exactly what we are hoping to find out." They turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. At first glance, it appeared human, but there was something subtly wrong about its proportions, its movement, the way light seemed to bend around it. "Captain Torres," the figure said, "I am Commander Sisk of the Hegemony Intelligence Division. You and your passengers are under arrest for violation of the Alien Technology Control Act." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. They had been found. But before anyone could react, Thekmore moved with a lightning speed that made Vorthan warriors legendary. His crystalline fist struck two of the hegemony soldiers before they could draw their weapons, and his war cry echoed through the abandoned section. "Run! Get thy shouted! We will hold them!" Chaos erupted as more hegemony soldiers poured into the area. Marcus grabbed Zara's hand, and they fled deeper into the station's abandoned sections, the sounds of battle fading behind them. "This way," Torres called, leading them through a maze of maintenance shafts and service corridors. "I know another way to my ship." They reached the docking bay to find it already surrounded by hegemony forces. Torres cursed fluently in several languages. "They were waiting for us," he said. "Someone tipped them off." Marcus realized what this meant. "They've been tracking us since Earth. This was all a setup." "Maybe," Torres said grimly, "but it doesn't matter now. We need to find another way off this station." That was when they heard the explosion. The lights went out. Emergency illumination kicked in, and the station shuddered around them. "What was that?" Zara asked. Torres checked his communication device. "Someone just blew up the main power coupling. The station's going to emergency power." More explosions followed, each one sending tremors through the station structure. In the distance, they could hear the whine of energy weapons and the shouts of security forces. "It's a revolt," Torres realized. "The refugees are fighting back." Through the docking bay windows, they could see ships launching without clearance, fleeing the chaos. But they also saw hegemony warships moving to intercept the escapees. "Captain," came a voice over Torres's communicator. "This is Kefra. Are you safe?" "For now. What's your status?" "Feck Moore is injured but alive. We have taken control of docking bay 7. Can you reach us?" "On our way." They fought their way through corridors filled with smoke and panic, past running figures, and emergency crews trying to restore order. When they reached docking bay 7, they found it held by a mixed group of alien refugees, all armed with salvage weapons. Feck Moore was indeed injured, his crystalline skin cracked in several places, but he was still fighting. "The little human and the Dracy," he called when he saw them. "Good. We have a ship ready for departure." "Where are we going?" Marcus asked as they boarded a battered transport vessel. "Haven," Kefra replied. "The only place left for people like us." As their ship launched into the chaos above Kepler Station, Marcus looked back at the burning facility below. The revolt had been spontaneous, triggered by the hegemony's attempt to arrest refugees, but it was spreading rapidly. "This is it, isn't it?" he said to Zara. "The beginning of something bigger." "Yes," she replied, watching the battle raging around them. The survivors are finally ready to stop running and start fighting back. Their escape through the hegemony blockade was harrowing, involving close calls with patrol ships and a running battle that left their transport damaged but functional. When they finally reached the jump point and disappeared into hyperspace, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. They were heading for Haven, where the survivors of a dozen destroyed worlds were gathering to build something new. Something that could stand against the hegemony's relentless expansion. Marcus thought about the chain of events that had brought him here. It had started with sharing a simple meal with a starving stranger. Now he was a fugitive from Earth, traveling to a secret rebel base with technical knowledge that might help turn the tide of a galactic war. His grandmother had been right about kindness creating connections across species and cultures, but she probably never imagined that those connections could literally change the course of history. As the transport carried them deeper into unknown space, Marcus and Zara sat together planning for an uncertain future. They had found each other in the darkness, and now they would face whatever came next as partners in the most important fight of their lives. Behind them, the revolt at Kepler Station was spreading to other worlds, carried by refugees who had finally found the courage to resist. The hegemony's greatest strength, their ability to scatter and demoralize their enemies, had become a weakness as those scattered survivors began to communicate, coordinate, and fight back. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that Marcus's grandmother would have understood perfectly. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness plant seeds that grow into something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The war was far from over, But for the first time since it began, the victims of hegemony aggression had hope. They had haven, they had each other, and they had the knowledge that even in the darkest times, there were still people willing to share their last meal with a stranger. That might not seem like much against an interstellar empire, but revolutions have started with less.